there, and welcome to another episode of Sin Spin with me, your host, Joe Royland. Now, while today actually marks the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band being reissued in brand new stereo mixes on vinyl and stuff, we're not going to be talking about that record today, but we are going to be talking about the deluxe reissue of Paul McCartney's Flowers in the Dirt album. It is part of the Paul McCartney Archive collection. It was his 8th solo studio album, released under just his own name, and it came out originally right around this time back in June 5th, 1989 to be specific, and it was considered at the time to be a major return to form for Paul McCartney after the underperforming albums of most of his work during the 80s. He teamed with several different producers, including Mitchell Froom, Neil Dorsman, Trevor Horn, Chris Hughes, David Foster, and Elvis Costello, who we'll get to a bit more at how he pertains to being a major part of this release in just a minute. Now, McCartney knew that he really needed to make a great album, and so he enlisted a crack band on this record, or an ace band, we should say. Crack makes it sound like there's drugs involved. But he got Amish Stewart from the Average Right Band on bass and guitars. He's also multi-instrumental. He's got Robbie McIntosh from the Pretenders on guitar, and noted session musicians Chris Whitten on drums and Paul Wickens on keyboards, along with the late Linda McCartney playing keyboards for this record, because he knew he was going to have to go out and tour like crazy behind this album, which he did. That would lead to the eventual live album, Tripping Like Fantastic, which is a great record. But this record also features some notable guest musicians. David Gilmour is on one of my favorite tracks on this album, We Got Married. But most importantly, Elvis Costello, who would co-write many of the album's songs, including the track you're hearing right now, My Brave Face, You Want Her Too, Don't Be So Careless, Love, That Day Is Done. It spent 18 months working on this record, and it did end up spawning quite a few hits. They did better in the UK than necessarily did here. My Brave Face, which you've hearing right now in its demo form. We're going to get more into that in just a second. This one, which is a great pop tune, and it features this moment of this falsetto vocal moment from Paul McCartney at the 2:29 mark, right after the middle 8 section, just kills me every time. Figure of Eight, which is one of my all-time favorite Paul McCartney songs, and Put Her There, which was a kind of a father to a son song that now that I have a son of my own has a significant meaning to me. But what's great about this record, other than the newly remastered version of the original album, is the inclusion of the 9 previously unreleased demo tracks that were recorded between Paul McCartney and Elvis Costello. They got together with just some guitars and keyboards and hammered out the basis for a lot of what would be this record, plus a song or so that would end up on Elvis Costello albums. Now, aside from the ones previously mentioned, there's also the early demo version of The Lovers That Never Were, which would turn up on McCartney's next solo album, 1993's Off the Ground, and which Elvis Costello himself said was the unhappy sequel to Veronica, which would be the big hit off of his album Spike from that same year, 1989. But there's a lot of other great tunes on the demo selection too, which is kind of like, they're like the crown jewel of this reissue. Great tracks like Tommy's Coming Home, 25 Fingers is an upbeat little number, Playboy Into a Man, which you're hearing right now, which is definitely more of a Costello composition, you can tell just from listening to it, than McCartney one, and Solo Candy, which sounds like early Beatles. Now, this comes as a 2 CD set, 2 LP, which is what I opted for, and a super deluxe box set, which has 3 CDs and a DVD, which contains even more unreleased demos, B-sides, remixes, and single edits, plus archival videos, a notebook of Paul McCartney's handwritten lyrics and notes, and a 112-page hardcover book documenting the making of the record. Now you're saying, why didn't you go for that version, Joe? Well, because it costs too damn much money, and pretty much what I really wanted out of this was all contained on the 2 LP or 2 CD version of the record. I will say, though, that in keeping with the original vinyl running time constraints, the album does not include the track Qu'est le Soleil, which is Where's the Sun, which is on the CD version of the album and included as the part of the digital download that comes with this record, as well as the track Party Party, which was originally issued as a bonus 3-inch single for the tour pack edition of the original issue of Paul McCartney's Flowers in There, which I also have. This came as a CD and a vinyl version, I believe it was an import. I got the CD version because that was all that was available to me at the time, but it was pretty cool. It came with a bunch of bonus stuff. So both those tracks, while not on like the vinyl version of the set, are on the CD, and you do get them as part of the digital download that comes with the vinyl version of the song. Now, I will say too that having heard these demo tracks, I actually like a lot of them better than I do the versions that ended up on the actual album. My Very Face is kind of split 50-50, but You Want Her Too is much better, and I much prefer it in the demo version on the album. I don't really care for the carnival motif that they added musically to the studio version. That kind of always turned me off about that song on that version, but otherwise, some of the demo versions are much better, I think, than the actual album tracks. And it's definitely worth picking this up to check those out if you're a fan of McCartney or Elvis Costello, or like me, a huge fan of this album. This is actually one of my all-time favorite Paul McCartney solo releases, or just anything that's come out from Paul McCartney in general. So very happy to have this out now. I probably will be picking up the Sgt. Pepper's 50th anniversary release. I was going to do a show on it, not sure if I'm going to now, because my friend Chris Brown from Blue Moose did a really good unboxing of it, and I shared that video on this page already. My friend Scott may also do it for his show on Righteous Vinyl, so I don't want to steal their thunder, and I've got enough other things to talk about. But thanks for tuning in this week to find all out about Paul McCartney's Flowers in the Dirt Deluxe reissue, part of the Paul McCartney Archive collection. And that's the show for this week. We'll talk to you next time on Sit and Spin. Tune in to find out what we got going on then. Something great, I'm sure. We'll talk to you next time on Sit and Spin. See you then. Oh yeah, one other thing I meant to talk about too. Aside from the album, you get this cool little booklet that comes in with the vinyl version. It's like a 3-page booklet. It has all the lyrics and the liner notes from the album inside, which is really kind of nice, and a couple of cool pictures. Really nice little in the studio picture right there that comes in that too. But just a quick little addition. Sorry about not including that in the main show. Didn't feel like re-recording the whole thing all over again. So that's it. Talk to you next time on Sit and Spin.